this is the Got It number 2 for lesson 7.3 linear functions. Okay, remember a linear function has a constant rate of change. And we learned in our example that the rate of change when you're looking at a table is the change in output, which we said the output is their y values, over the change in the input, which is your x values. Okay, so let's look at A and B here. So does the table of values represent a linear function? Explain why or why not. All right, let's look at letter A. Remember, the rate of change is the change in output over the change in input. And it has to be constant for it to be a linear function. All right, the change in the input has to be the same, and the change in output has to be the same each time. So let's look at the changes here. Your input is your x values, your output is your y values. And let's check. So we'll start with the input. The change in input, to go from 0 to 1, you're adding 1. To go from 1 to 2, you're adding 1. To go from 2 to 3, you add 1. And then to go from 3 to 4, you add 1. So the change in input is the same each time. You're adding 1. Let's check the change in output. To go from 2 to 4, you're adding 2. To go from 4 to 7, though, you add 3. So already the change in output is not constant, it's not the same. All right, to go from 7 to 8, you add 1. And then to go from 8 to 10, you're adding 2. All right, so this does not represent a linear function because the change in output isn't the same, which means the rate of change is not going to be constant. So no, this is not a linear function. Make sure you have this, because the change in output is not constant, which means the rate of change is not constant. Okay, let's check our second table. This is letter B. All right, the input is the x and the output is the y. Let's check our input. To go from 1 to 2, you add 1. To go from 2 to 3, you add 1. To go from 3 to 4, you add 1. And then to go from 4 to 5, you add 1. So our change in input is the same each time. You're adding 1. All right, let's check our output. When you go from 6 to 9, you add 3. When you go from 9 to 12, the change is adding 3. To go from 12 to 15, the change is adding 3. And then to go from 15 to 18, the change in output is 3. Notice the change in output is the same each time, and the change in input is the same each time. So I'll write it up here. So the change, remember the rate of change is the change in output over the change in input. All right, and we said our change in output each time you're adding 3. So it's 3 over, and then the change in input each time you're adding 1. So it's 3 over 1. Well, a fraction sign is like a divided by sign. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. That's our rate of change, is 3. So to answer the question, does this table of values represent a linear function? The answer is yes, because the rate of change is constant and it's 3. Okay, make sure you have all of the answers here, all the work for the answers. All right, now you want to complete whatever classwork it has been assigned.